So we got the ateez KQ Fellaz Yunho solo performance, which I'm pretty excited for, honestly, because this is the one that's to Coco, and as this is the one that has Scott's choreo, yeah, which is a choreo that I am familiar with. So I'm pretty excited going into this because I have a little bit of an idea of what this is going to be. Interesting decision on the song choice lyrically, again, much like the KQ Fellaz performance 1 that I watched. I'm jumping ahead a little bit in terms of the order of these performances, but birthdays are an opportunity for chaos and self-indulgence, so I'm just going to go for it. But again, interesting choice in terms of the lyrical content and the vibe of this particular song. That's something to look forward to, but from like little things that I've seen of Yunho's performance, there's just something about him performing that is just so captivating that I'm excited to watch what he does with this choreo. So dang, the lighting.
Ride through the hood with a tech on me. 28 make a double. I ain't never trying to cut her, so explain why these motherfuckers slept on me. 8 ball till I reach me a kilo. Made enough, then I went to see Rico. Paid in full if you acting like Rico. I'ma tell you tape his ass like Nico.
Ooh, see, first off, the lighting we got here, super cool. It's basic setting, right? Like same like parking garage that we had in the first one as well, but this one playing with the lighting a little bit feels like we're at a different like angle as well, but love the way that we've set up a bit more of a scene than before, where at least performance 1 for KQ Fellaz, it felt very much they just were there, happened to be empty at that time, and they used it because it was a big open space. But also, I don't know, is it like the quality's popping off? Maybe it's just me with the lighting and I have a fish brain, so I'm excited. But I love how this choreo has a little more of subdued feeling, and then we got some more of the dancers coming in to back him up as well before we get into this like drop in the production.
8 ball till I reach me a kilo. Made enough, then I went to see Rico.
Good little footwork there. Love that smile as well.
High school got up on a nigga with the bottle 12 came from my pistol in a fucking dishwasher. One hit wonder, yeah, that's a fact. Hit his ass to the police, wonder where I'm at. Make so much money off this goddamn song. Still get in your ass like a goddamn thong.
Sorry, just like for one, facial expressions. Said it in the first one. Facial expressions are so good. Love how we've got like the strong percussion on it as well. And yes, it does give some cyberpunk aesthetic between the lighting and the outfit choice. I agree. But also like the way that he's hitting on these beats, again, super heavy percussion in the songs that they're choosing, that they're having this like bounce on certain parts of the production in terms of their movements. Facial expressions are so good for him too. Love the little hydraulic on that, moving with his hand too. Smooth there with the arm movements. Yeah, that's for the kids. Stop trying to act like you don't know what it is. Baking soda ain't cut me no check. If they don't, I'ma show them motherfuckers what an arm and hammer is. Everybody know like, it's so interesting to see this choreo because I know this choreo, and to watch the way that he's doing it, certain movements where he's putting like different emphasis on things, and the way that he's taking it and putting his own character. There are certain movements where he's got like some good fluidity with it, but other movements where he's choosing to be more rigid with it. And I think that's very interesting too. Like he's sacrificing some of the fluidity available with some of these movements and exchanging it for power, right? There's more of a like intensity to the way that he's hitting the movements. It starts off cheeky in his performance, and you can see some of the intensity ratchet up as he keeps going. And I think that's really fascinating. Like he's more fluid there. Yeah, that's a fact. Hit his ass to the police, wonder where I'm at. Make so much money off this goddamn song. Still get in your ass like a goddamn thong. Cocoa Puffs, yeah, that's for the kids. Like he could have been more fluid with that, and he chose to have that ticking instead. Love that little hop to the side. I'm in love with the cocoa. Ooh, see, like I was just saying, like fluidity there. I'm like, okay, he could have added more fluidity to the one movement, but then he adds it into the hand detail and he leads it by his head, right? He looks at the movement and then lets his hand have more fluidity there. There's more of a like leading with the wrist on the one movement. Like he's more tense in the shoulders, but more fluid around his hands.
Like the way that he angles his hand, like they could have been sharp, right? He could have gone with a sharp movement, but instead he slows it down and he adds more fluidity to it. That's an interesting choice, especially leading the attention with his head. Love that little tap on the toe on the beat too. I love how this is like how we end off, the way that the screen like blacks out at the end. That was so interesting to me. Again, as someone who knows that choreo, I find it fascinating to break down the differences between different people that I've seen. I've seen multiple people do that choreo in a lot of different ways, and it's interesting to see how every single dancer takes it a different way. And I feel like it gives me some insight into at least what Yunho's style was at this point. This is obviously early on in his career. Not going to take that as something that will develop as we go forward, but I think it's really interesting to see where he chooses like rigid movements versus fluid movements, right? His hand movements tend to be more fluid, but then when we get to something like shoulders, he tends to use those for power, right? He doesn't have the same fluidity in the shoulder movements, but he does put more power behind them. And I think that's an interesting choice for this one. And like in general, that he has like specific ways that he's isolating out where he's going to have those more fluid, gentle, slower movements in comparison to some of those like faster, heavier hitting, powerful movements. But loved it. Think he did a great job with it. I feel like I didn't really see the other dancers, and I'm sorry. I was focusing on him because this is supposed to be focused for him and for his birthday coming up. So I wasn't really looking at the whole as opposed to just focusing on him, especially since, again, it's choreo that I'm familiar with and I've seen it done with like multiple people. So it is something that I was a little bit deviating from, but really liked his performance and what he did with it. And again, I think it gives me some, at least ballpark foundation for what his dance style is overall. I'll have to dig more into some of his performance stuff before I have a clearer idea of that. But great job overall with the choreo. I think he did an amazing job, which I feel like is a bit of a given, right?